Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It was one of those nights where the rain didn't just fall. It poured. The kind of relentless downpour that blurred vision, swallowed headlights, and erased the lines on the road. Daniel had stayed later than usual at his office, trying to finish a last-minute pitch, and now found himself crawling along a 2-lane highway that cut through the woods of rural Pennsylvania. There were no streetlights out there, just darkness, trees, and the sound of rain hammering the roof of his car like desperate fingers. The windshield wipers thumped rhythmically, barely managing to keep the water at bay. Daniel leaned forward, eyes straining through the wash of water and mist. His GPS had rerouted him due to flooding on the main road, and now he was relying on its unfamiliar directions, every twist and turn more isolated than the last. As he took a slow curve, he saw it, just barely, up ahead. A figure, standing at the edge of the road, a woman in a long white coat, soaked and unmoving. Daniel's heart skipped. He eased off the gas and pulled to the shoulder. The rain seemed to grow louder as he rolled down the window a crack. "Are you okay?" he shouted over the storm. She didn't respond. She just stared. Water dripped from her dark hair, and her face was pale, mouth slightly open, as if trying to form words. Her eyes didn't quite meet his. They seemed to look past him, at something behind. Daniel hesitated. Every rational part of him told him not to get out, but something deeper, maybe guilt, maybe instinct, made him open the door. The cold hit him like a punch as he stepped into the rain. He approached slowly. "Do you need help?" Still no answer. When he got close enough to reach out, the woman turned, suddenly, fluidly, and walked into the woods. No umbrella, no shoes, just disappeared between the trees. Daniel froze. The logical thing was to leave, maybe call it in, but his gut twisted. What if she was hurt? What if she was in shock? Against every shred of better judgment, he followed. The forest was thick, the ground slippery and uneven. He could barely see a few feet ahead. The white coat was just visible through the branches, always just out of reach. He called out, but she never turned around, and then she was gone. He turned in every direction, nothing. Just trees and rain. Panic clawed at his throat. The woods were too quiet now. The sound of rain had dulled. Even the wind had died. Then he saw it. Not the woman. A car. Parked deep in the woods, long abandoned. The driver's side door hung open, vines curling up around the wheels. Daniel stumbled closer, confused and shaking. Inside the car was a photo. A man and a woman. Her, the woman from the road, smiling beside a man Daniel didn't recognize. Underneath it was a newspaper, soaked and yellowed. The headline barely legible. "Local woman missing after fatal crash. Body never recovered." Daniel stepped back, breath catching. A creak sounded behind him. He spun. There she was, inches from his face. She wasn't wet anymore. Her eyes were empty, black holes that pulled at something inside him. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, and then everything went black. When Daniel woke, he was in his car, engine off, parked by the side of the road. The passenger door was wide open. No sign of the woman, no footprints, just rain still falling. He turned the key. The engine groaned but didn't catch. The battery was dead, and in the rearview mirror just for a second he saw her, sitting in the back seat, smiling.
Story number 2.
It was nearly midnight when Claire finally left her friend's house, the rain already turning the narrow back roads into slick ribbons of danger. She had declined the offer to stay the night, thinking the 30-minute drive through the countryside wasn't a big deal. She'd done it dozens of times. But tonight, something felt off. The rain was heavier than expected, slapping violently against her windshield as her wipers struggled to keep up. The road was nearly invisible at times, the darkness swallowing everything outside her headlights. Her GPS had no signal out here. Trees crowded the edges of the road, looming like walls of shadow. About 10 minutes into the drive, she noticed something strange. She was passing the same mailbox again. A dented, rusted box with peeling red paint and the name Hollinger barely visible. At first, she brushed it off as a coincidence. Maybe the homes just looked similar in the dark. But when she passed it a third time, her fingers clenched on the steering wheel. She pulled over and checked her phone. No signal. The rain was deafening now, a roar on the roof of the car. Claire put the car in reverse, turned around, and tried a different fork in the road, one she could have sworn she hadn't taken before. But minutes later, There it was again. The Hollinger mailbox. Her chest tightened. She hadn't made any wrong turns. She was sure of it. She tried calling someone, anyone, but her phone just showed searching. Her only choice was to keep driving. The rain blurred her vision, and her eyes were burning from the constant strain. That's when she saw the figure, a man standing just off the shoulder, dressed in dark clothes soaked to the bone. He didn't wave or signal for help. He just stared. As she passed him, Claire glanced into the rearview mirror and saw him still standing there, watching. She kept going. She didn't slow down again. But 5 minutes later, a chill slithered down her spine. There he was again, standing in the same position by the road, same soaked clothes, same blank stare. This time, she didn't pass him. She slammed on the brakes. She was done playing along. Claire threw the car in reverse, backing up fast, eyes flicking to every shadow. But when she checked the side mirror, the man was gone. The road behind her was empty. Just as she let out a shaky breath, something slammed into the back of her car. The entire vehicle jolted. She screamed and spun in her seat, but there was nothing, just the storm in the trees. Her rear windshield was cracked from the inside. Panicking now, she floored it, not caring about the road or the mailbox or the man. But when she rounded the next corner, her headlights illuminated something that made her blood run cold. Her own car, parked on the side of the road, cracked windshield, wipers still twitching, her car as if it had been waiting for her. Claire screamed and swerved, tires shrieking against wet asphalt. She didn't stop. She didn't look back. Somehow, she eventually made it to the highway. The rain began to let up. Her phone buzzed with messages. Signal returned. Civilization surrounded her again. But ever since that night, Claire refuses to drive in the rain. Not because of the roads, not because of the dark, because every now and then she sees that same man again, just standing on the shoulder of some forgotten highway, watching, as if he's still waiting for her to come back.
Story number 3.
Lena had always been a skeptic. She scoffed at ghost stories, laughed off every eerie rumor, and dismissed every strange event she came across as nothing more than coincidence. But that was before she moved into the old house on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much to look at. A 2-story Victorian home with creaky floors and cracked windows, standing on a quiet street where most of the other houses were either abandoned or falling apart. The landlord had assured her it was perfectly safe, though something about it made her uneasy from the start. She chalked it up to the isolation, the darkness that seemed to settle around the house at night. The first week was fine, aside from the odd creaks and groans of the house settling. The attic door, which had been locked when she moved in, began to rattle around midnight. But when Lena went up to check, it was locked still, no sign of movement. She dismissed it, telling herself it was the wind or the house's age playing tricks on her. It wasn't until the second week that things started to get strange. It began with whispers, low, almost imperceptible, coming from the walls. At first, Lena thought it was just the house again, old plumbing or the wind in the rafters. But as the days passed, the whispers grew clearer, more distinct. Sometimes they sounded like words, her name spoken softly. Other times just fragments of sentences too faint to understand. Lena would shake it off, tell herself it was nothing. But then the door to the attic, the one she had never been able to open, unlocked itself. One evening, she came home from work to find it wide open. No wind, no sign of anyone. Curious but also terrified, Lena climbed the stairs to the attic. The air up there was thick and musty, filled with the smell of dust and something older. Boxes of forgotten things were scattered about, but it wasn't the boxes that caught her attention. It was the mirror. She didn't remember seeing it when she moved in, but it was there now, large and ornate, standing against the wall. The glass was cracked, the edges chipped. She walked up to it, her reflection distorted and jagged in the broken surface. Lena reached out and touched the glass. A sudden chill swept over her. The temperature dropped and a low hum filled the attic. Then the reflection moved. Not hers, something else. A figure appeared in the mirror behind her, a shadowy shape that seemed to flicker and shift. It was barely there, but she saw it, tall, thin, with eyes that gleamed like cold stars. The figure reached out toward her, its fingers stretching unnaturally long, as if trying to touch her through the glass. Lena backed away, heart pounding in her chest, and the reflection followed, its hand almost brushing against her cheek. Terrified, she ran down the stairs and locked herself in her room. But the whispers didn't stop. They only grew louder, more insistent, echoing through the house like they were coming from everywhere at once. That night, she couldn't sleep. The shadows in her room stretched unnaturally long, and the feeling of being watched crawled over her skin. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that figure standing in the corner of her vision, waiting. She couldn't take it any longer. She decided to leave. She packed her things, ready to get out of the house for good. But as she reached for the front door, she heard something, soft and muffled. Her name, Lena. It was coming from the attic. She turned slowly, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up. The door to the attic was wide open again. Her heart raced as she walked toward it. The whispers called to her, soft and pleading, pulling her up the stairs. With every step, the air grew colder, denser. She reached the attic, and the mirror was waiting for her, as if it had been expecting her. The reflection was clearer now, the figure standing right behind her. But this time it wasn't just the reflection. It was real. The figure stepped out of the mirror, its cold eyes fixed on her, and Lena froze. It was tall, impossibly thin, and its face was nothing but darkness. The whispers were louder now, a chorus of voices that filled her mind, drowning out everything else. It reached for her, its fingers long and sharp. The last thing Lena heard before everything went dark was a voice, soft, mocking, familiar. "You never believed me, did you?" When the police arrived the next morning to check on her, they found the house empty. No sign of Lena. The mirror was gone. The attic door was locked again, and the whispers had stopped. But if you walk by the house on quiet nights, when the rain falls heavy and the wind howls through the trees, you might still hear her voice, whispering from the attic.
Story number 4.
It had been a long, exhausting week for Derek. He'd been stuck in his office, working late into the night on a tight deadline, and the idea of spending the weekend alone in his apartment was the only thing that kept him going. So when Friday evening finally arrived, he was relieved. He locked up his office, grabbed a takeout coffee, and made his way home through the streets of the city, where everything was covered in a thin blanket of fog. The city seemed emptier than usual, the kind of fog that made every streetlight look like a halo and turned the world into a quiet, half-dream. He arrived home and settled in with his food. The apartment was small, just a one-bedroom, but it was all his, and that was enough. He turned on the TV to drown out the silence. After a few hours, the fog outside thickened and it began to rain. But as he sat there, a strange sensation began creeping over him, a sense of being watched. At first, Derek brushed it off. The apartment was old, with thin walls and creaky floors. He was used to the odd noises, but then he heard something, a tapping. Not at the door, but somewhere in the apartment. Soft, rhythmic, almost like a knock. He paused the TV, straining his ears to hear better. It came again, louder this time. 3 sharp taps followed by silence. His heart rate picked up. He wasn't expecting anyone. He got up, walked to the door, and checked the peephole. Nothing, just the dim, foggy outline of the hallway. Probably just the wind, he muttered to himself, trying to calm down. But when he turned to walk back to his couch, he froze. A shadow flickered in the corner of his vision. He whipped around, but the room was still, empty. He stood there for a long moment, listening to the rain batter the windows. The shadow was gone, but the unease remained. He tried to shake it off. He returned to his seat, picked up his food, but before he could take another bite, the sound came again. This time it was louder, more deliberate. 3 knocks, right from inside his apartment. It was coming from the kitchen. Derek's stomach twisted, and his hands began to shake. He slowly stood and walked toward the kitchen, his breath shallow. The air felt heavier now, thick and damp. He reached for the light switch. Nothing. He flicked it again. Nothing. The kitchen stayed dark. His mind raced. Was there someone in there? But he hadn't heard a door open, hadn't seen any signs of forced entry. The only thing was that tapping noise, repeating like a countdown. Then, without warning, the lights flickered on, and there, standing in front of the kitchen sink, was a figure. It was him, or at least it looked like him. The figure stood motionless, its back turned, staring at the counter. Derek's heart skipped. It was wearing his clothes. It had his height, his hair, everything, except its face. Where there should have been a reflection of him was nothing but a dark blur, a void, like a patch of shadow in the shape of a person. Frozen in terror, Derek opened his mouth to shout, but no sound came out. His legs felt heavy, like they were glued to the floor. He couldn't move. The figure slowly turned around, its head jerking in a sharp motion as if it hadn't been able to process the movement. The empty face stared at him, and for a moment, Derek could have sworn it smiled, but it was a twisted, hollow expression, empty and wrong. Suddenly, the lights flickered again. When they came back on, the figure was gone. Derek stumbled backward into the living room, gasping for air. His mind was spinning. Had he imagined it? No, he couldn't have. His heart raced and his breath came in short, frantic gasps. He grabbed his phone, intending to call someone, anyone, but it was dead. The screen was completely black. As he fumbled with the device, he heard it again. The tapping. This time, it came from behind him. He turned slowly, every muscle in his body screaming for him to run, but he couldn't. He wasn't sure if he could even move anymore. His body had gone rigid, paralyzed by the sight before him. The figure stood just inside the living room, staring at him with that same black void where its face should have been. It didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, like it was waiting for something. And then in a voice that was his own, but colder, deeper, and wrong, it spoke. Why didn't you listen? Derek's heart pounded in his chest as the figure began to step forward, one slow, deliberate movement after another. He stumbled backward, his legs giving out beneath him until he crashed to the floor. But the figure was still coming, its footsteps echoing, the air growing colder with each step. Why didn't you listen? It repeated, the voice reverberating in his skull, making his ears ring. Desperate, Derek scrambled backward toward the door, but before he could reach it, the figure was standing over him. Its empty face hovered inches from his, and the last thing he saw before everything went dark was the smile, a twisted, horrifying grin. When the police arrived hours later, called by concerned neighbors who had heard nothing but the sound of the storm outside, they found the apartment locked from the inside. The windows were shut. There was no sign of a break-in, but the lights flickered in the hallway, and the tapping never stopped.